On this day, in 1913, at about 6:15 in the morning, a police contingent converged on a small farm at Cedar Creek, just outside Samford, northwest of Brisbane. The contingent, accompanied by the farm's owner, James Fogg, was solely focused on one task: the apprehension of a murderer. On the previous day, an 11-year-old girl named Ivy Mitchell had been invited to play on a friend's farm. Catching a ride part of the way with her parents in the family sulky, little Ivy walked the remaining distance and remained with her friend Marianne Frisch until about 4:30 in the afternoon. Heading back out onto the road towards home, Ivy stopped momentarily for a quick chat with the Smith children playing by the roadway, and then walked into the distance and out of sight towards Cedar Creek. It would be the last time the outside world would see little Ivy alive. When Ivy failed to return home by 6 p.m, her brother James and father headed out onto the Cedar Creek to Samford Road, expecting to find Ivy dawdling along oblivious to the time. When they failed to find her, they returned home in the hope that somehow they'd missed her. Ivy had still not returned. Mounting a full-scale search, Ivy's father called on both his eldest son James and eldest daughter Minnie, also securing the help of their neighbours August and William Webber. The party headed back out onto the roadway and made their way towards the Frisch's farm. When passing by the Park Estate School, at about halfway between the Mitchell's farm and Samford, James noticed little barefoot tracks in the dust on the road. On further inspection, heavy work boot tracks were also located, joining the little barefoot tracks before both sets led off into the bush on the side of the road. Asking his two children to remain on the roadway, Mr. Mitchell began to head into the thick undergrowth with the help of the Webber brothers. After about 5 minutes of frantic searching, the trio located Ivy's body about 30 metres from the side of the roadway, and it became instantly obvious that she had been brutally murdered. Little Ivy had been laid on her right side with her arms pinned beneath her body, and her throat had been cut in 4 places. Most horrifically, there were signs she had been sexually assaulted as part of the attack. William Webber was immediately sent to the Samford Hotel, the only residence in the area with a telephone, to call the police, and Mr. Mitchell broke the news to his 2 eldest children standing nearby. A team of detectives, including Joseph S.B. Dodds, the government medical officer at the time, arrived at the scene just after midnight on the 9th of June. The process of gathering evidence was immediately undertaken, with numerous pieces being located in a very short period of time. The heavy work boot tracks were of most interest. From the impressions, detectives were able to discern that the left boot had been re-heeled at some time with a metal heel plate, which had worked its way loose in a very particular way. These tracks were covered with boxes, and plaster of Paris casts were taken soon after to be utilised as evidence at any subsequent trial. A roadblock was then set up nearby in order to ensure the murderer, if still in the vicinity, could not flee the area. And it was at this very roadblock that police would crack their case in the most unbelievable and fortuitous way. At about 4:45 in the morning, a sulky came into view heading in the direction of Samford. The police stopped the driver, who identified himself as James Fogg, a farmer from nearby Cedar Creek. Having made an early start on his way to Brisbane, James Fogg was given a brief account of the night's events, likely dumbfounded that such a brutal crime had been committed in such a tranquil place. On hearing about the unusual boot prints, James Fogg did something that took the police by absolute surprise. He reached around into the back of the sulky, from whence he produced a sugar bag. Peering inside, the detectives discovered a pair of boots that matched exactly the peculiar tracks they'd located alongside the Park Estate School. Immediately demanding to know who the boots belonged to, James Fogg stated that they'd been entrusted to him by his new farmhand, a man by the name of Ernest Austin. The police contingent arrived at the farm of James Fogg just after sunrise, and Austin was quickly located and interrogated at length as to his whereabouts on the previous day. The clothes he was wearing were found to be covered in blood, with Austin blaming the stains on everything from a slaughtered calf to a dog-attacked wallaby to a cut finger. Ultimately, Austin was detained and returned to the murder scene, where he was forced to view the little girl's body. And after much effort to get the suspect to look down, he claimed he'd never seen the murdered girl before. Austin was taken back onto the roadway and formally arrested for the murder of Ivy Mitchell, and was transferred back to Brisbane and Bogorow Jail to await his committal hearing. Ultimately, Austin would be found guilty of the crime at trial, for which a sentence of death was passed down. His story and life would end on the gallows within the confines of Bogorow Jail, with the dubious distinction of being the very last execution to take place in the state of Queensland. However, that is a story for another day.